This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by, since 1984, Miles Books has been the region's family-run independent bookstore with over 72,000 titles of new, used, and antique books, and the ability to find and order rare or specialized titles. Certified book appraisals are also available. Located in downtown Highland on Jewett Avenue. Follow them on Facebook for sales, author book signings, and special events.
Welcome to our show. We're coming to you from Miles Books in Highland, Indiana. And with us today, we have a lifetime educator and coach, and now author of Jeremiah Wasn't Just a Bullfrog. And that is Tim Vassar. And welcome to our show.
Thank
and
you.
Of course, needing no introduction on the table, Jim, the proprietor of Miles Books, to talk to Mr. Vassar about his wonderful book that we had an opportunity to read the best we can before we got here today. So, Tim, welcome to our show.
Thank you
and
very much.
Very excited to let you tell us about your book. Why don't you first of all tell us a bit about yourself, where you
Sure.
came from, and where you went to school, and really the most important part is how this came to be.
Okay. Well, I'll try to cut this down to a couple of hours, but just to answer that question.
I don't think I brought enough tape.
I grew up in Highland, Indiana. Graduated from Highland in 1976. Proud graduate of Mildred Merkley Elementary School, Highland Junior High, and of course Highland High School. Wow, there's a lot in the book about Highland, about growing up in Highland that people will recognize when they read the book about that. After graduating from Highland, I went to Butler University in Indianapolis and graduated there in 4 years, became a teacher and a coach, eventually became a school principal and retired as a principal in Crown Point 2 years ago.
Amazing.
But you're not retired, though.
I'm still doing some work with student teachers at Indiana University
Okay.
and so forth.
And being an author now, you'll never retire.
I don't know about that. But the best thing that ever happened to me in Highland is that's where I met my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And
So, would you classify this book as somewhat of an autobiography, or written from an autobiographic standpoint, as a mechanism to become like an inspirational type of book?
well, it didn't start out that way. It was just going to be a book about track and field. I participated in track and field all the way through junior high, through high school, in college.
Wow. At Butler?
At Butler,
Right.
yes. And the story about that pursuit is in that book as well. But my wife had asked me last summer to tell her a story about track and field, whether it was running, coaching, whatever the case may be. And so I started to tell her a story, and 3 hours later I was still talking. And she was still listening, so it's like there's somewhat of an engagement there. And she said, "You need to write this into a book." Well, Bill, that wasn't even in my plans to write a book about that stuff. So, I agreed. I started writing. Well, I found I couldn't stop. All these things were just coming back to me, all the way from 5th grade, all the way through present day. And as I was writing the book, it totally changed, though, because I realized that the book really wasn't about me. The book was about all these people who had poured into my life to help me out. And so the book is really largely a thank you to all those folks, to all those teachers, coaches, students, colleagues that I've had. So that's a big thread throughout the book as well. So that's really how it came about to do that.
Yeah. And you give reference to a Bible verse in here as well, that you want to talk to us a bit about that.
Oh, I have no problem talking about Jesus. Bible verse is Jeremiah 29:11, where God tells you that He has a plan for your life, a plan for you to succeed and not to be harmed. That wasn't in the book at all. I like the verse, but it was not in the book. as I was probably 3/4 of the way through the book, the title of the book had nothing to do with this and everything to do with track and field. And it's like this title is going to change. So I was taking a shower and was not washing my hair because that's a short issue, and started humming the song from 1971. Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog by Three Dog Night, which a lot of people, in my age group, that's what they did. And it hit me all of a sudden that, wait a minute. So I turned the water off and said, Jeremiah wasn't just a bullfrog. He had a plan for my life, and all these people were part of the plan. That's when the title changed, and that's when the gist of it changed. And you'll see that verse, it's threaded throughout almost every chapter in that book.
So it's kind of ingrained throughout.
It's ingrained throughout.
Elementary school here and high school, and then eventually Butler. So you talk about the people in this book that were along that educational course that really were an inspiration to you.
Absolutely.
And but it is interesting how it morphed, as a lot of things do, like our show kind of has, where you start out, this is what we're going to do, and not so much later on.
Right.
So it's kind of a progression that has its own life.
Absolutely.
Out of all these people that came in out of your life, can you pinpoint a few, or maybe one that you think was the biggest inspiration to you?
Wow. That's a great question. I don't know if I could put this just to my life, but the biggest molder of my life was my dad. And my dad, tremendous servant here in Highland, Indiana for a long time, and served on the school board at Highland for 32 years.
$14.95 plus tax.
Before that, he coached everything. I mean, it was from Little League to CYO basketball to Boy Scouts to Cub Scouts to anything in the town. So he was his model of being a servant led down to all three of his boys and his daughter. And you'll see the Vassars are servants. That's what we do. So he was the biggest inspiration. Educationally, there were so many great teachers, and you could attest to that as well.
Absolutely.
So many great teachers and so many great coaches. I had a teacher in 6th grade. It's in the book, Miss Sexton. It's a teacher I did not want to have. There was only 2 6th grade teachers at Merkley. No. And back then, you received postcards in the mail about 2 weeks before school started that said, here's who your teacher's going to be. Spent a lot of time praying that that's the teacher I would not get. And we chased the mailman down who gave us the postcard, and I turned it over to see my teacher was Miss Sexton. Well, my sister had her 2 years prior to that. Said, that's not the teacher you want to get, because she makes you do your work, she makes you buckle down, she doesn't take anything off you, and she makes you study, and everything has to be completed and fine-tuned. I wanted no part of that. And so when I turned that card over, it's like, really? I thought we had a deal, God. And I learned by Halloween of that year that it was an incredible blessing to have her, because she was all those things and more. She taught us to buckle down, she taught us to study, she taught us to read, write, and arithmetic, and all that good stuff. And she was strict, she was stern, but she was a tremendous influence in education for me. And then when we move into high school, some of the coaches that I had the legendary coach as a freshman year, Mike Paline. Mike went, I shouldn't say Mike, Coach. Coach went directly from Highland High School to Purdue University to coach.
Wow,
and
that's
that is
a big jump. Huge jump. He was quite the guru. I just saw him last weekend. Matter of fact, spent some time with him. He's already read the book. He's enjoyed the book, but he was in there. He really built my love for track and field up. And then there's other teachers in there. The next year it was Jim Steed, who was a tremendous teacher at Highland, and then Rich Dilling, coach my junior year, and then John Collett my last year. So at Highland, we had really exceptional track and field teams, but I had 4 different coaches in 4 years. And I don't know why they weren't staying, except Mike went to Purdue, of course, but it was a great run. We had great teams. A couple of state champions, perennial sectional champions. Sure.
But the reason that we have Tim here as an independent bookstore, is we try and make sure that authors have a place where they can actually come and visit people.
Mm-hmm.
What's happened in our internet society is that people, they still read books, okay, and they will come into independent bookstores, the Kingdom as well, chain store, and the Big River, online. But we're trying to cultivate what was in the past, which is the love, not just of the book, okay, but of the author, and most importantly, the person that reads the book gets to sit and talk with the author. So our purpose today is to promote the fact that Tim is going to be here the 31st of the month?
31st. Mm-hmm.
From 11:30 to 2. So people can come and visit with him, talk with him. Hopefully you buy a book, at least shake his hand, congratulate him on what he's done. Because it is a difficult thing to write a book. I'd like Callie to sit down so that I could exit. She I don't want to break the camera, so she's going to take over, if that's okay.
No,
I think I'm
that's
more
great.
likely to do that than you.
Thanks.
Tremendous influence on what teachers should be like.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't as scary as my sister had said she was going to be, but she was very strict and she held her feet to the fire. And that was 6th grade, a pivotal year, and it made a huge difference
Wow.
in my
Yeah,
trajectory.
Yeah, the way you're describing her, it brought back memories of when I found out I was going to get Sister Rosarita for 8th grade. Literally, and this is not any urban myth, there were skid marks from heels going into her classroom from young men that had to be
that's
literally drug into her classroom. You know the movie, The Nun, the horror movie?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't? Those nuns had nothing on Sister Rosarita whatsoever. She put the fear of God into every young man that entered her classroom. There were 2 teachers, Mrs. Mitchell, then there was Sister Rosarita, who oftentimes resembled Dick Butkus without a mustache. And I'm sure that she can put the hurt to Dick Butkus with what I've seen happen in that classroom.
good.
So it seems like every school has one of those teachers that gets those kids ready for the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that's what her job was.
Right. The classroom where nobody really initially wants to be in, but when they finish, they're so glad they were there.
Yeah.
That's the case with me.
Yeah, and I still remember, even though I had nightmares, literally, when I found I was going to be in there, I had some discipline to carry out things that, going through that class. So, talk to us a bit about, now you're going to be here on the 31st?
31st.
The 31st,
of
and
August.
be able to talk to people about this. And there's much more that we can't even cover here, but one thing I wanted to find out from you, is there any plans for other books, or do you think this is going to be a career for you, or?
Well, it was never intended to be a career. If it wasn't for my wife asking me to tell her stories, this book probably never would have been written. When I was
Thank you, Mary, for doing that and making him write this. So we appreciate that.
That was nice of you to say. When I was principal, I would write notes to my staff. They would get those every Thursday night, kind of inspirational messages. And I did that for years and years and years when I was principal. And the plan was, I'm going to turn those into weekly inspirational messages for teachers and then try to put it in book form. That hasn't happened because this just trumped it. When Mary and I had that discussion, and it just trumped it and it just took off.
But we still have that option.
We still have that
Yeah.
option.
To continue
And
with
boy,
that.
teachers do need inspiration.
Yeah.
Those poor people are put on the front lines of education and have to deal with a lot of things, and the environment's changing.
Absolutely, and the teachers need the respect that they have coming due
And
them.
I have to reiterate what Tim said. Highland had amazing teachers,
phenomenal.
and probably still
Still
do.
do,
I don't
right.
have any kids in the school district, but I know that we're rated very highly.
Very.
And I think Highland is a great town and is very lucky to have the school system that we have. And
Absolutely.
I had many teachers that impacted our lives.
Absolutely, they made such a huge difference in our lives, and then we made a difference in other people's lives because of what they poured into us.
Right.
And it's been fantastic. So there is another book. I'm about 50-some pages into it right now, but it's not a sequel because this book it's not going to have a sequel. But the next book is basically, it's more biblical. And the book has to do with the book of Leviticus. And as most people, when I don't want to give it all away,
Yeah, we
because
don't
Jim's
want
like,
spoilers.
don't tell me anything
No
more.
spoilers.
But basically, it comes down to the fact that, when most people read a book, they start at the beginning. Very few people turn to the back and work their way backwards, but most people start at the beginning. Well, when people read the Bible, they typically start at the beginning. May or may not be the best place to start. I'm not going to be the judge of that, but they've heard about this, how great the book is. So they start reading in Genesis, and there's some really, really, even if you're not a believer, there's some really cool stories there. I mean, you got the creation, you've got Noah's Ark, you've got the Tower of Babel, you have all these things, Joseph and the Amazing Color Technica, all that Dreamcoat. And then it's like, this is pretty cool. And they take another sip from their coffee and they start to read Exodus, and it's like, oh my gosh, this gets even better. So wait a minute, you're marching across the desert and part the Red Sea, and this is like the greatest thing that I've ever read in my life. And then you flip over to Leviticus, and it's like, what happened? You are just bored out of your mind. Yes, and I did say that line. You were bored out of your mind. So this book that I'm writing is really trying to make that particular book come alive and more applicable to people's lives. So not sure when I'm going to finish that, but that's the next one in line.
So that's one of those stay tuned for.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Yes.
It's coming.
Yeah. And again, you're going to be here on the 31st for a book signing and discussion with some fans who will come in and want to talk about the book. And we're looking forward to that, and hope you have great success with this book. And well, Tim, thank you for being on our show and discussing a little bit about the inspiration behind your book, and we wish you the best.
Thank you.
And when those other books come out for now. One other thing I want to do, thank your wife for letting you talk 3 hours, because usually with Kelly it's 2 minutes with me, and she usually says something like "be quiet" or gets up and walks away. So,
well, with
is it Mary? Mary, bless your heart.
Yeah, Mary and I we've been married almost 39 years now, and I can say this without reservation, Bill, without reservation. The best person I've ever met in my life is my wife, by far. And
well, if Kelly would stick around long enough for me to talk to her, I would say.
So there you go. Yeah.
Now, you all know that's
Challenge
not true.
Accepted. Yeah, they all know it's not true. So
yeah, you notice how she uses the word challenge.
Challenge.
Like I'm challenging. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks a lot, Tim, and
Okay.
We appreciate you being on the show. And
Thanks
good
for
luck.
having me.
And
Thank you.
goodbye for now.
bye.
Bye.
This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by, since 1984, Miles Books has been the region's family-run independent bookstore with over 72,000 titles of new, used, and antique books, and the ability to find and order rare or specialized titles. Certified book appraisals are also available. Located in downtown Highland on Jewett Avenue. Follow them on Facebook for sales, author book signings, and special events.